The morning Corbin Shaw lost everything. He was sitting on a park bench in the rain with his shoes still shined. That detail would matter later. That detail would be the thing he remembered most. Not the phone call that had come 40 minutes before, not the sound of his own voice going flat and mechanical as he told his driver to stop the car, not even the walk through the gate into Millbrook Park where the groundskeeper gave him a look and said nothing. What he remembered was looking down at his shoes and thinking, someone shined these this morning, and had no idea. He had been a wealthy man for 23 years, not comfortable wealthy, not doing well wealthy. The kind of wealthy that stops feeling like anything at all after a while because it simply becomes the water you swim in. Corbin Aldridge Shaw, founder and CEO of Aldridge Capital Group. Worth, as of the previous Tuesday's close, somewhere north of $400 million. Worth, as of this particular gray Tuesday morning, considerably less than that. Because the SEC investigators who had been circling for 8 months had finally landed, and the men Corbin had trusted, the men he had built this with, men who had sat at his table and eaten his food and held his hand at his mother's funeral, had been moving money in ways that would take federal prosecutors 2 years to fully explain to a jury. His name was on the door. His signature was on the documents. It did not matter, in the eyes of the law or the press or the 14 people who had already called his cell phone in the last half hour, that he had not known. So Corbin sat on a bench in the rain with his shined shoes and his suit jacket turning dark at the shoulders, and he did not move. He was 54 years old. He had not cried since his mother's funeral. He was not crying now. He was doing something worse. He was sitting very, very still, in the way that men do when the thing holding them together is nothing but momentum, and the momentum has finally stopped. He didn't hear the girl at first. She had been standing at the edge of the path for a little while, he would realize later, just watching him the way children watch things they don't fully understand but recognize as important. She was maybe 10, 11. It was hard to tell. She wore a yellow raincoat that was a size too big and rain boots that were a size too small, and she was carrying a brown paper bag that had gone soft at the corners from the wet. "Mister," she said. Corbin looked up. She had dark eyes and the kind of serious face that children get when they've learned early that the world requires their full attention. Her hair was damp and pulled back in a way that suggested someone had done it carefully this morning, even without much to work with. "Are you okay?" she asked. The question was so plain and so direct that it almost knocked something loose in him. People did not ask Corbin Shaw if he was okay. People asked him what he needed, what he wanted, what his timeline was, whether he'd seen the figures from Q3. No one had asked him if he was okay in. He genuinely could not remember how long. "I'm fine," he said. The automatic answer. She looked at him with those dark eyes and clearly did not believe him. "You've been sitting there a long time," she said. "Since before I got here, and it's raining. I'm aware." She looked at the bag in her hands. Then she looked at him again. Then she did something that Corbin Aldridge Shaw, who had negotiated contracts worth 9 figures and sat across tables from men who could buy small countries, was not prepared for. She held out the bag to him. "I have a sandwich," she said, "bologna and cheese. I made it myself. It's pretty good." A pause. "You can have it if you're hungry." He stared at her. "I'm not hungry," he said. "You look hungry," she said, with the particular confidence of a child who has learned to read need in people. "My grandma says hungry isn't always about food." He didn't know what to say to that. He was fairly sure he hadn't known what to say to anything in the last 2 hours, but this was a different kind of not knowing. This was the kind that came from being surprised by the world. He took the bag. He didn't know why. He would wonder about that later. At 3 in the morning in a hotel room with the city laid out silently below him, he would turn it over and over. He took the bag because he was 54 years old, and sitting in the rain, and a child had offered him something, and it had been so long since anyone had offered him anything without wanting something back. "Thank you," he said. He sounded strange to himself, like the word was in a language he'd almost forgotten. She sat down at the far end of the bench, not close, not invasive, just present, and pulled her raincoat tighter. "I'm waiting for my dad," she said. "He's supposed to meet me here at 9. Corbin glanced at his watch. It was nearly 9:30. He said nothing about this. "What's your name?" he asked instead. "Addie," she said. "Addison. But everyone calls me Addie." She looked at him. "What's yours?" "Corbin. She tried it out. Corbin, that's an old-fashioned name. It was my grandfather's. I'm named after my great-aunt, she said. She was a nurse in the war. My grandma says she was the bravest person she ever knew. A beat. I don't know if I'm brave yet. I'm still figuring that out. Something shifted in him quietly, like furniture moving in another room. You gave your lunch to a stranger in the rain, he said. That's pretty brave. She thought about that with the seriousness she seemed to bring to most things. Maybe, she said. Or maybe it's just what you're supposed to do. He ate the sandwich, bologna and cheese on white bread with yellow mustard, slightly soggy from the damp. It was the best thing he'd tasted in months. He sat there in Millbrook Park, in a suit that cost more than most people's rent, and ate a 10-year-old's packed lunch and felt something in his chest he couldn't name. Addie waited. Her father didn't come. By 10 o'clock it was clear he wasn't coming, and the way she handled this, carefully without drama, folding the knowledge up and tucking it somewhere quiet inside herself, told Corbin everything about how many times this had happened before. Do you have a phone? He asked. To call someone. It's out of minutes, she said. Can I? He stopped. He was aware of how this looked. A man in an expensive suit, alone in a park, offering things to a child. Is there a neighbor or a family friend? Someone I could call for you from my phone. She looked at him for a long moment, assessing. My grandma, she said finally. Grandma Bev. He dialed. A woman answered on the second ring with the particular sharpness of someone who has been half waiting for a call that worries her. Addie? Baby, where are? Ma'am, Corbin said. My name is Corbin Shaw. I'm at Millbrook Park. Your granddaughter is safe. She's been waiting for her father, I think. He doesn't appear to be coming. A silence on the other end. Then a breath that carried a whole history in it. I'll be there in 15 minutes, the woman said. You stay with her. Yes, ma'am, Corbin said. We'll be here. He hung up and looked at Addie. Grandma Bev's on her way, he said. I know she would be, Addie said simply. They sat together in a silence that wasn't uncomfortable. The particular silence of two people who have nothing to prove to each other. The rain began to ease. A sparrow landed on the path in front of them, looked around with the busy self-importance of sparrows and left. Why were you sad? Addie asked. Not unkindly. Just the way children ask things, as though the answer matters and therefore shouldn't be danced around. I had some bad news, he said. About work. What do you do? I run a company. Or I did. He paused. Some people I trusted made bad decisions, and now it looks like I made them too. She thought about this. Did you? She asked. Make the bad decisions? No. Then you didn't. He looked at her. It's not always that simple, he said. My grandma says the truth doesn't get more complicated just because people make it hard to see, Addie said. She says the truth is actually the simplest thing there is. It's the lies that get complicated. He was quiet for a moment. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman, he said. She's the wisest person I know, Addie said. After my mom. Where's your mom? The girl's expression shifted, not with grief exactly, but with something older than grief, something that had already passed through grief and come out the other side into something quieter. She passed away, Addie said. 14 months ago. Cancer. She said it the way people say things they've had to say many times, the edges worn smooth. It's just me and Grandma Bev now, mostly. And my dad when he comes. When he comes. Corbin looked at this child, this small, rain-damp, serious child in the too big yellow raincoat, who had given away her only sandwich and called it just what you're supposed to do, and felt something crack open in his chest that had been sealed for a very long time. He had a daughter. Had. That was a different story. One that lived in a different part of him, filed away in the same place as his ex-wife's name and the sound of a nursery that never became what it was supposed to. Clara had miscarried 3 times before they both stopped trying. The grief of that had folded itself into the fabric of his work, into the 80-hour weeks and the quarterly reviews and the relentless forward motion that was the only kind of motion he'd allowed himself. He had never sat in the rain with a child before. He had never been offered a sandwich. Beverly Whitaker arrived in 13 minutes, not 15, which told Corbin she'd driven faster than the limit allowed. She was a woman in her late 60s, with silver hair pulled back sharp and eyes that took in a room or a park bench in one practiced sweep. She saw Addie. She saw her granddaughter was whole and dry enough and not distressed, and then she turned those eyes on Corbin. He had been assessed by lawyers, investors, journalists, and federal investigators. None of it was quite like being assessed by Beverly Whittaker. "You're the man who called," she said. "Yes, ma'am. You didn't have to stay. I said I would." Something in her expression shifted, not softening exactly, more like recalibrating. She knelt down and put her arms around Addie, who pressed her face into her grandmother's shoulder with a familiarity that suggested this was where she had spent a good portion of the last 14 months. "Your father called me," Beverly said into Addie's hair. "He said to tell you he's sorry. Something came up." Addie pulled back. Her face was very still. "Something always comes up," she said. Beverly looked at her granddaughter with the particular heartbreak of people who love children they cannot fully protect. "I know, baby," she said. "I know." She stood. She looked at Corbin again. "Thank you," she said, "for staying. She gave me her lunch," he said. "It seemed like the least I could do." Beverly looked at Addie, who had the expression of someone who doesn't see what the fuss is about. "Of course she did," Beverly said. They left. He watched them walk through the park gate, Addie's yellow raincoat vivid against the gray morning, Beverly's hand firm and warm on her shoulder, and then they were gone. Corbin sat alone on the bench for another few minutes. His phone had 47 missed calls. The rain had almost stopped. Somewhere a groundskeeper was dragging a bag of leaves across wet grass, and the sound of it was the most ordinary sound in the world, and for some reason it made his eyes sting. He stood up. He put his phone in his pocket. He walked out of the park with his ruined shoes and his soaked jacket, and for the first time in 3 hours, he had something other than emptiness in front of him. He wasn't sure what it was yet, but it was something. The investigation took 11 months. In that time, Corbin Aldridge Shaw hired the kind of lawyers who don't come cheap and don't come fast, and he cooperated with federal investigators in a way that his former partners, now definitively his former partners, did not. He gave up his offices on the 42nd floor. He moved out of the apartment overlooking the river and into a hotel, and then into a rented house in a neighborhood that was quieter and smaller than anything he'd lived in for the last 2 decades. He had money still, not 400 million, but enough. Enough to be comfortable, enough to be quiet, enough to sit in a house with a real kitchen and cook actual meals for the first time in years, which he did badly at first and then less badly, and eventually looked forward to in a way that surprised him. He thought about the girl sometimes, about the sandwich and the sparrow, and the truth doesn't get more complicated just because people make it hard to see. He thought about Grandma Bev and the speed with which she'd arrived. 13 minutes. The precise accounting of someone who shows up. He thought about Addie's father. Something always comes up. He didn't do anything with these thoughts for a long time. Then one morning, he made a call. The Whittaker house was on Delaney Street, which Corbin found without difficulty, because the internet makes finding things easy, and because Beverly Whittaker had left a name on the Millbrook Park Community Board as a volunteer coordinator. The kind of practical, visible contribution that people like Beverly make to the world without announcing it. He stood at the door with a feeling he recognized from a time before all the money, before the company, from when he was 26 years old and new to a city and not yet sure he deserved to take up any space in it. He knocked. Beverly Whittaker answered. She looked at him for a moment in the particular way people look at things they recognize but can't immediately place. Then she placed him. "The park," she said. "The park," he agreed. "I'm sorry to come unannounced. I should have called first." "Yes, you should have," she said, without particular rancor. "What can I do for you, Mr. Shaw?" He had thought about what he wanted to say for 3 days. It came out differently than he'd planned. "Your granddaughter gave me her lunch," he said, "on the worst morning I've had in 20 years. I didn't handle it right at the time. I didn't say thank you properly. I didn't make sure she was going to be all right. I sat with it. For almost a year I sat with it." He paused. "I'd like to do something. For her, for you, if you'll let me." Beverly looked at him for a long time. "You'd better come in," she said. The house was small and absolutely full. Full of photographs and bookshelves and a kitchen that smelled of coffee and something baking, and the comfortable clutter of a life actually lived in a space. There was a drawing on the refrigerator, a yellow raincoat figure and a taller figure beside a brown bench, stick arms touching. Corbin stopped and looked at it. "She drew that when she came home that day," Beverly said, coming up beside him with 2 mugs. "Said she met someone sad in the park and she hoped he felt better." He took the mug. He didn't trust his voice for a moment. "She's at school?" he asked. "Until 3. Beverly sat at the kitchen table. He sat across from her. "Now, tell me what you actually want, and you can skip the part where you're cautious about it, because I didn't raise children by being fooled by caution." He laughed. It surprised him, a real laugh, short and unpracticed. "I have a foundation," he said. "It's small right now, being restructured along with everything else, but I want it to do something real. Not just write checks to organizations that write reports about writing checks." He looked at his coffee. "I know what it is to be in trouble and have someone see you. I didn't know that before that morning. I thought I did, but I didn't." He looked up. "I want to fund education for kids who are like Addie. Smart, serious, paying attention, and doing it without the things that should be there for them." Beverly was quiet. "And what do you want from us?" she asked. "Nothing," he said. "I'd like Addie to have a scholarship. Fully funded from elementary through college, wherever she wants to go. I'd like it to be in her mother's name, if that's all right with you. And I'd like your guidance, if you're willing, on how to do this right. Because I've been a man who did things the wrong way for a long time by being very sure he was doing them the right way, and I'm trying to stop." Beverly looked at him for such a long time that he started to wonder if he'd made a mistake coming here. Then she set down her mug. "Her mother's name was Sandra," she said. "Sandra Claire Whitaker. That's a good name," he said. "She was a good woman," Beverly said. They sat in the quiet kitchen with the coffee and the drawing on the refrigerator, and the morning light came through the window above the sink and laid itself across the table between them. At 3:15, the front door opened and closed with the particular force of a child who has been holding things in since lunch. "Grandma, Tyler Reyes said I was wrong about photosynthesis, but I wasn't. I looked it up. Plants, absolutely." Addie stopped. She stood in the kitchen doorway with her backpack on and her yellow raincoat and those dark, serious eyes, and she looked at Corbin. He looked back. Something moved across her face, recognition, and then the slow processing that children do when a thing from one context appears in another. "You're the man from the park," she said. "I am," he said. "You look different." "I've had a better year," he said. She came and sat at the table with the directness of a child who has not yet learned to edge around things. She looked at her grandmother. She looked at him. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Addie." Beverly started. "It's all right," Corbin said. He looked at the girl. "You did something kind for me once. I wanted to say thank you properly, and I wanted to ask if I could do something kind back." "You don't have to do that," Addie said. "I didn't give you the sandwich so you'd owe me anything." "I know," he said. "That's exactly why I'm here." She considered him. The clock on the kitchen wall ticked. From outside came the sound of a neighbor's dog and a passing car and the ordinary world going about its business. "Are you okay now?" she asked. "From before. From whatever happened." He thought about it honestly, the way she deserved. "Getting there," he said. "Some days better than others. But," and here something came up through him that he hadn't planned on, something true and unvarnished and real. "I think about what you said, about the truth, that it doesn't get more complicated just because people make it hard to see. My grandma says that. Your grandma's right." Addie looked at Beverly. Beverly looked at Addie. Some communication passed between them that was only partially visible to outsiders. "He wants to help," Beverly said, "with school, with the future." Addie's expression went through several things at once: surprise, and the complicated response of a child who has learned to be careful about things that sound too good, and something underneath both of those that was young and uncomplicated and simply glad. "My mom used to say that the right kind of help doesn't make you small," Addie said, slowly. "It just makes the path a little clearer." "Your mom was right," Corbin said. Outside, the afternoon was doing what afternoons do, getting on with itself, carrying people forward, whether they were ready or not. But inside the Whitaker kitchen, in the light from the window and the smell of whatever was still warm in the oven, something was settling into place. Not a rescue, not a charity. Something more like the completion of a circuit, a morning in the rain that had been quietly looking for its ending and had finally found it, here, in a small house on Delaney Street with coffee going cold and a child's drawing on the refrigerator. Corbin Aldridge Shaw had walked into Millbrook Park with nothing but a suit and a catastrophe, and walked out with a bologna sandwich and something he still couldn't name. He could name it now. He stayed for dinner. Beverly made chicken and rice, and Addie told him with great conviction and considerable detail exactly why Tyler Reyes was wrong about photosynthesis, and Corbin listened and asked questions, and the evening came on slowly through the kitchen windows, and for the first time in a very long time, he was exactly where he was supposed to be.